They called him the son of a failure. Years later he returned rich and destroyed everyone who mocked him. My name is Arjun, and for most of my childhood, people in my village called me one thing. The son of a failure. I grew up in a small village near Nagpur. The kind of place where everyone knows your family history. Every mistake, every rumor, every failure. If someone loses money, the entire village talks about it for years. And unfortunately, my family became that story. When I was younger, my father was one of the most respected men in the village. His name was Mahesh Patil. He owned farmland, 2 tractors, and a small rice mill. Farmers used to line up outside our house asking for help. People respected him, some even feared him. But everything changed when I turned 12. My father trusted the wrong person. His cousin, Rakesh came to him with a business opportunity. He claimed he had connections in a new agricultural supply company. He promised huge profits. He told my father that if they invested early, they could double their money. My father believed him. After all, he was family. So my father invested most of our savings into that business. But within a year, everything collapsed. The company disappeared, the office shut down, and Rakesh vanished. With the money, just like that, my father lost almost everything. The tractors were sold, the rice mill shut down, the farmland slowly went to the bank, and the respect our family once had disappeared overnight. But losing money wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the people. Because villagers love watching someone fall. One afternoon I walked past the tea stall in the market. 2 men were talking. They didn't notice I was standing nearby. One of them laughed and said, "Mahesh thought he was the smartest man in the village." The other replied, "Now look at him, lost everything like a fool." They both laughed. I was 12 years old. And that was the first moment I truly understood something. People respect success, but they enjoy your failure even more. School wasn't any better. Kids repeat what they hear at home. One boy in my class shouted one day, "Hey Arjun, did your father find the missing money yet?" The whole class started laughing. I stayed silent. I didn't fight. I didn't argue. But inside my mind, something changed. I made a promise to myself. One day, I would prove every single one of them wrong. Life at home became harder. My father stopped talking much. Every evening he sat outside our small house, staring at the road. Like he was waiting for something that would never come back. My mother started working in other people's homes. Cleaning floors, washing dishes, cooking food, for people who once respected our family. Seeing that broke something inside me. One night I heard my parents talking quietly. My mother said, "Mahesh, we can still recover. We just need to start again." My father sighed. Then he said something I will never forget. "Trust is the most expensive mistake a man can make." After that night, I started studying harder than ever before. Because I realized something important. In our village, only 2 types of people escape poverty. The powerful, and the educated. We had already lost power. So education was my only way out. But success always creates enemies. In 10th grade, I topped the entire school. When the results were announced, the principal called my name. Arjun Mahesh Patil, first rank. The classroom went silent. People couldn't believe it, but one person looked especially angry. Vikram. His father was the richest man in our village. Vikram always believed he was better than everyone else. After school he stopped me near the gate. He smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. "So you topped the school?" I nodded. Then he leaned closer and said quietly, "Don't think this changes anything." I didn't respond. He laughed. "People like you don't go far." Then he walked away. That day I learned another lesson. Success doesn't silence your enemies. Sometimes, it creates new ones. But none of that mattered. Because I had one goal. To leave that village, and never come back poor again. My father sold the last piece of land we owned so I could go to college in Pune. Leaving home was terrifying, but also exciting. For the first time in my life, I was somewhere nobody knew my past. Nobody knew my father. Nobody knew our failure. College life was tough. Most students came from rich families. They had laptops, cars, expensive phones. I had a scholarship and a second-hand phone. To survive, I worked part-time washing dishes at a restaurant. Sometimes my shifts ended at midnight. Then I studied until 2 in the morning. Many nights I fell asleep on my books. But slowly, things started changing. In my second year of college, I entered a national coding competition. And somehow, I won. That victory changed everything. Professors started noticing me. Companies offered internships. For the first time, I started believing that maybe my life could be different. But success attracts attention. And sometimes, the wrong kind. One evening after class, a senior approached me. His name was Karan. Everyone on campus knew him. Smart, ambitious, but also dangerous. He smiled and said, "I've been hearing a lot about you, Arjun." I thanked him politely. Then he said something strange. "I'm building a tech startup, and I want you on my team." It sounded like a dream opportunity. But something about his tone made me uneasy. So I asked carefully, what kind of startup? He looked around to make sure nobody was listening. Then he said quietly, we solve problems for powerful people. At that moment, I realized something. Success opens doors, but not all doors lead to good places. And choosing the wrong one can destroy your life. I told him, I'll think about it. He smiled. Don't take too long. Then he walked away, and as I stood there in the empty hallway, I had a strange feeling. My life was about to change. But not in a simple way. Because sometimes, the hardest battles are not against poverty. They're against the people who want to control your future. And I had just caught the attention of someone very dangerous. I should have said no immediately. Looking back now, that would have been the smartest decision. But when you're young, ambitious, and desperate to escape poverty, opportunities can look like miracles, even when they're actually traps. After that conversation, I couldn't stop thinking about what Karen said. We solve problems for powerful people. What did that even mean? The next day, he found me again in the college cafeteria. He sat across from me like we were already friends. You thought about my offer? He asked casually. I hesitated. I still don't understand what your company actually does. He smiled. That's because it's not something we talk about in public. That answer made me even more suspicious. But he kept talking. You're one of the smartest coders in this college, Arjun. You've already won competitions. Companies will offer you small internships. Then he leaned forward. But I'm offering you something bigger. He opened his laptop and turned the screen toward me. Numbers. Huge numbers. Revenue charts. Growth graphs. Bank transactions. My eyes widened. Is this real? Karen nodded. This is what we made last quarter. The number was shocking. It was more money than my father had earned in his entire life. My mind started racing. If I worked here, maybe I could pay off our debts. Maybe my parents could live comfortably again. Maybe the people in my village would stop calling my father a failure. Karen watched my reaction carefully. Then he said something very deliberate. Don't worry. Everything we do is legal. That sentence should have been reassuring. But something about the way he said it felt rehearsed. Still, I agreed to meet his team. And that decision changed everything. 2 days later, he took me to an office building near the city center. But instead of going through the front entrance, he led me to the back. We walked through a narrow staircase and entered a small office space. Inside were 6 people, all of them sitting in front of powerful computers. Huge monitors, multiple screens, servers running in the corner. The room looked more like a hacker lab than a startup. This is the team, Karen said proudly. These are the people changing the game. One guy turned around in his chair. This is the genius you were talking about. Karen nodded. Meet Arjun. The guy stood up and shook my hand. I'm Samir. Then he pointed at the screens. We build systems that collect information. I frowned. What kind of information? He grinned. Everything. That was the moment the first alarm bell rang in my mind. Karen quickly jumped in to explain. We help companies understand their competitors. We analyze market trends. We gather data. It sounded reasonable, but something still didn't feel right. Then Samir opened one of the programs. Rows of personal data appeared on the screen. Phone numbers, emails, private records. I stared at it. Where did you get this? Samir shrugged. The internet is full of information. He tapped the keyboard again. Another database appeared. This time it contained financial records. Private banking data. My stomach tightened. That can't be public. Samir smirked. It is if you know where to look. I looked at Karen. This is illegal. The room went quiet. For a moment nobody spoke. Then Karen laughed. Relax. You're overthinking. He leaned against the desk. We're not stealing money. We're just collecting information. And powerful people pay a lot for information. I realized what was happening. They were selling private data, corporate secrets, personal records, maybe even blackmail material. My mind went back to my father's words. Trust is the most expensive mistake a man can make. I stood up. I can't be part of this. Karen didn't look angry. He just looked disappointed. You're making a mistake. I shook my head. No, I'm avoiding one. For a moment I thought that was the end of it. I grabbed my bag and walked toward the door. Then Karen said something behind me. Your father lost everything because he trusted the wrong person, right? I froze. Slowly, I turned around. How do you know about that? Karen smiled calmly. I told you. We collect information. A chill ran down my spine. He walked closer. Your father invested in a company that disappeared. Your family lost land. Your mother works in other people's homes. Each sentence felt like a punch. How do you know all this? Karen shrugged. Like I said, information is power. Then he looked me directly in the eyes. And right now, you have 2 options. The room suddenly felt smaller. Option 1, he continued. You join us. You earn more money in 1 year than your father earned in his entire life. He paused. Option 2, he smiled again. You walk away. But remember, we know everything about you. My heart started beating faster. Was that a threat, or just a warning? I couldn't tell. But one thing became clear. Walking away wouldn't be simple anymore. For the first time since coming to Pune, I realized something terrifying. I had just stepped into a world far more dangerous than poverty. And people like Karen didn't like losing useful assets. I took a deep breath. Then I said something that surprised even myself. I'm still leaving. For a moment the room was completely silent. Then Karen laughed, not angrily, almost impressed. You've got courage. He stepped aside and pointed to the door. Go. I didn't wait. I walked out of that building as fast as possible. But something inside me told me this wasn't over, because people like Karen don't forget. And they definitely don't forgive. As I stepped onto the busy street outside, I had no idea that my biggest challenge was just beginning. Because refusing Karen's offer had just made me his enemy. For the next few days, I tried to pretend nothing had happened. I focused on classes, assignments, coding practice. I told myself walking away from Karen was the right decision. But deep down, something didn't feel right. People like Karen didn't simply let things go. And I was about to learn that lesson the hard way. 1 week later, I received an email. It was from a tech company in Bangalore. I had applied there months ago for an internship. My hands were shaking as I opened the message. But instead of an interview invitation, there was a rejection. Not just a rejection, a strange one. The email said, after reviewing your background, we have decided not to proceed further. That confused me. My academic record was excellent. My competition results were strong. Why would they suddenly reject me? Still, I ignored it. Maybe there were stronger candidates. But then it happened again. Another company, another rejection, and then another. Within 2 weeks, 4 companies rejected me. And every email looked similar. They all mentioned my background. That word started bothering me. What background? I had never done anything wrong. One evening, I went to the college placement office. The coordinator, Mrs. Deshpande, looked uncomfortable when I asked her, "Ma'am, can I ask something?" She nodded. Of course. Why am I getting rejected everywhere? She hesitated. Then she lowered her voice. Arjun, there have been complaints. My heart dropped. What kind of complaints? She sighed. Someone reported that you were involved in unethical activities online. For a moment I couldn't breathe. What? They claimed you were connected to data theft operations. My mind immediately went to one person. Karen. I clenched my fists. That's not true. Mrs. Deshpande nodded. I believe you. But companies are very careful about reputation. She looked sympathetic. Once your name appears in these types of reports, they avoid the risk. I left her office feeling like the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. Karen hadn't threatened me directly. But he had done something worse. He had quietly destroyed my opportunities. That night, I barely slept. My mind kept replaying everything. My father losing everything because he trusted someone. My family being mocked. My mother cleaning houses. And now this. Another person trying to destroy my future. The anger inside me started growing. But anger alone wouldn't solve anything. If Karen wanted a war, I needed to become smarter than him. The next morning, I went to the college library. Not to study for exams, but to research something else. Cybersecurity, data systems, network tracking. If Karen's entire business was built on information, then information could also destroy him. For the next few weeks, I worked harder than I ever had in my life. Classes during the day, research at night, coding experiments, security analysis. Slowly, I started understanding how people like Karen operated. And the more I learned, the more dangerous his operation looked. They weren't just collecting random data. They were hacking corporate servers, accessing private government databases, selling information to powerful clients. It was far bigger than I first imagined. Which meant one thing. If someone exposed them, the consequences would be massive. But exposing them wouldn't be easy. People like Karen always protected themselves. They used fake companies, hidden servers, encrypted networks. Still, every system has a weakness. You just have to find it. 3 weeks later, I got my first breakthrough. While analyzing some online traffic patterns, I discovered something interesting. One of the servers used by Karen's group wasn't completely secure. It was hidden, but not invisible. My heart started beating faster. If I could access that server, I might find proof of everything. Proof that could destroy Karen's reputation. Proof that could clear my name. But accessing it would be risky. Very risky. If they detected me, things could get dangerous. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I remembered something. My father sitting silently outside our house. My mother working in other people's homes. The villagers laughing. And Vikram saying, "People like you don't go far." I whispered quietly to myself. "Watch me." Then I started typing. Breaking into the server wasn't easy. It took 2 full nights. But finally, I got in. And what I found inside shocked me. Files. Thousands of files. Private data. Corporate secrets. Government records. But one folder caught my attention immediately. It was labeled, "Special Clients." Curious, I opened it. Inside were contracts, payment records, and lists of clients who had purchased information from Karen's operation. Some of the names were businessmen. Some were politicians. Some were companies. The amount of money involved was unbelievable. But then something even more shocking appeared. One document had a familiar name. Rakesh Sharma, my father's cousin, the man who disappeared with our money. I stared at the screen in disbelief. Why was his name here? I opened the file, and what I read made my blood run cold. According to the document, Rakesh hadn't simply disappeared. He had used Karen's network years ago. They helped him move money, hide transactions, create fake companies. My hands started shaking. That meant one thing. The man who helped destroy my father's life was connected to the same network Karen was running now. For years I believed my father was simply unlucky. But now, it looked like something much bigger. Something planned, something calculated. And suddenly this wasn't just about my future anymore. It was about my family. About justice. About everything we had lost. I leaned back in my chair. And for the first time since leaving my village, I felt something powerful growing inside me. Not fear. Not anger. Strategy. Karen thought he had trapped me. He thought he had ruined my career. But what he didn't realize was that he had just given me access to the one thing that could destroy him. Evidence. And now, the real game was about to begin. For the next few minutes, I just stared at the screen. The name was still there. Rakesh Sharma, my father's cousin, the man who disappeared with our money, the man who destroyed our family. For years I believed he simply ran away after scamming my father. But now it looked like something much bigger. Something planned, something organized, and somehow, Karen's network was connected to it. My hands were shaking as I opened the rest of the file. Inside were transaction records, bank transfers, shell companies, encrypted messages. The documents showed that Rakesh had moved large amounts of money through several fake businesses. And one of those businesses looked very familiar. I leaned closer to the screen. It was the same company my father had invested in. The so-called agriculture supply company. But according to these records, that company had never actually existed. It was a shell company created for one purpose: to collect money from investors and disappear. My chest felt tight. That meant my father wasn't just unlucky. He had been scammed deliberately. And the worst part, Rakesh had help, professional help, people who knew how to hide money and erase evidence. People like Karen. Suddenly everything made sense. Why Karen knew so much about my family. Why he mentioned my father during that conversation. It wasn't random. He already knew the story. Which meant one thing. Karen's organization had been involved in scams like this for years. My mind was racing, but I forced myself to stay calm. If I reacted emotionally, I could ruin everything. Right now I had something very valuable. Access. And information. If I played this carefully, I could expose the entire operation. And maybe finally clear my father's name. Over the next few days, I started secretly copying files. Slowly, carefully. I didn't download everything at once. That would raise suspicion. Instead, I collected small pieces of data every night. Transaction records, client lists, communication logs. The deeper I went, the darker the truth became. Karen's operation wasn't just about selling information. They were involved in multiple illegal activities. Corporate spying, financial fraud, blackmail, and sometimes, they helped people disappear. The more evidence I collected, the more dangerous the situation became. If Karen ever discovered what I was doing, things could turn very bad. But I couldn't stop now. This was bigger than me. Bigger than my career. This was about justice. About 2 weeks later, something unexpected happened. I received a message from an unknown number. It simply said, "We need to talk." At first I ignored it. But a few minutes later, another message appeared. "I know what you're doing." My heart started racing. Did Karen find out? Then the third message came. "Relax, I'm not your enemy." I stared at the screen. Then the phone rang. After a moment of hesitation, I answered. "Hello." A calm voice replied. "Arjun, yes, my name is Neha. I work in cybercrime investigation." My entire body went cold. Cybercrime. How did she know about me? She continued. "We've been monitoring Karen's operation for a long time. But they're very careful. We've never had enough evidence to shut them down." There was a pause. Then she said something that shocked me. "But recently, someone started accessing their internal servers." My heart nearly stopped. "That was you, wasn't it?" For a moment I didn't know what to say. Finally I asked quietly, "How did you find me?" She answered calmly, "You're good, but not invisible." There was another short silence. Then she said something important. "Don't worry, we're not here to arrest you. We want your help." My mind was spinning. "You want me to spy on them?" "Not spy," she corrected. "Collect evidence. We believe their network is responsible for several large scams. And we think you already found something important." She paused again. "Something related to your family." That sentence hit me hard. "How do you know about that?" She replied calmly. We do our research. For a few seconds neither of us spoke. Then she said, meet me tomorrow. Public place. Coffee shop near the university. Then the call ended. The next day, I went to the cafe she mentioned. I arrived early and sat near the window. Every person who walked in made me nervous. Then a woman in her late 20s approached my table. She looked confident, professional. She sat down across from me and smiled. You must be Arjun. I nodded. And you're Neha. She placed a small badge on the table for a moment. Government identification. Then she put it away again. We've been investigating Karen for almost 2 years, she explained. But every time we get close, the evidence disappears. She leaned forward. But now we have you. I crossed my arms. And why should I trust you? She smiled slightly. Because we both want the same thing. To bring them down. Then she slid a small file across the table. Look at this. I opened it. Inside were photos, documents, reports, and one picture made my stomach twist. It was Rakesh, my father's cousin, but the photo was recent. Very recent. He wasn't missing. He was living comfortably in Mumbai, using a new identity, new businesses, new life, while my family struggled for years. I looked up slowly. Where did you get this? Neha answered quietly. The same place you did. She paused. Karen's network. Then she looked directly at me. Help us bring them down. And we'll make sure the truth about your father comes out. For a long moment I said nothing. Then I thought about my father again. About the humiliation he endured. About the village laughing at us. And I realized something. This wasn't just revenge. This was an opportunity to destroy the people who destroyed my family. I looked at Neha and nodded. Tell me what to do. She smiled, and said 3 simple words. Let's start the war. The moment I agreed to help Neha, my life officially changed. Until now, I had only been trying to survive, trying to build a career, trying to escape the past. But now, I was stepping into something much bigger. A real battle, and the enemy was far more powerful than I originally thought. Neha explained the situation carefully. Karen's operation is extremely smart, she said. They never keep evidence in one place. They constantly move servers. They erase logs, and they use fake companies to hide their money. She took a sip of coffee. But every system has a weakness. I nodded. And that weakness is, she looked at me. You. I frowned. Me. You already accessed their internal network, she explained. That means they haven't detected you yet. Which gives us a small window. A dangerous window, but a powerful one. What exactly do you want me to do? I asked. Neha leaned forward. Keep doing what you're doing. Access their servers. Collect data. But this time, collect everything. Payment records. Client identities. Communication logs. Anything that proves their crimes. I thought about the risks. If Karen found out, things could get very ugly. But Neha seemed to read my thoughts. Don't worry, she said. We'll protect you. I almost laughed. People like Karen didn't scare easily. But still, this was the best chance I had to expose them. And to finally reveal the truth about my father. So I nodded. All right. Neha smiled. Good. Then she said something serious. But remember one thing. Karen is not stupid. If he even suspects someone inside the system, he will start hunting. For the next few weeks, my life became a strange double routine. During the day, I was a normal college student, attending classes, submitting assignments, pretending everything was normal. But at night, I became something else, a digital spy. Every night around midnight, I logged into the hidden server again. Carefully, slowly, I copied files piece by piece. Transaction histories, encrypted conversations, client records. Every file I collected went into a secure drive Neha had given me. And the deeper I went, the bigger the operation looked. This wasn't just a small group of hackers. This was an entire underground network. They worked with politicians, businessmen, international clients. The amount of money flowing through the system was unbelievable. But the most important files were still connected to one person. Rakesh, my father's cousin, the man who destroyed our family. One night, while going through old records, I found something new. A conversation log. It was from years ago. Between Rakesh and someone named K. My heart skipped a beat. K could only mean one person. Karen. I opened the conversation, and what I read made my blood boil. Rakesh had asked Karen for help setting up a fake agriculture company. Karen had provided everything. Fake documents, fake accounts, fake websites. The entire scam had been planned carefully. They targeted investors from small towns. People who trusted family connections. People like my father. My fists tightened. My father wasn't foolish. He was manipulated. The entire thing had been a trap. And now I finally had proof. The next day I met Neha again. I gave her the files. She examined them carefully. This is huge, she said quietly. With this evidence, we can reopen multiple cases. Then she looked at me. But we still need more. I sighed. More. She nodded. We need something that directly links Karen to the entire operation. Something that cannot be denied. I leaned back in the chair. That might take time. Neha smiled slightly. Take your time, but be careful, because something strange had started happening recently. Karen had become more active, more cautious, and that worried me. 2 nights later, something happened that confirmed my fear. While I was accessing the server, a message suddenly appeared on the screen. Unauthorized activity detected. My heart stopped. That message had never appeared before. Had they found me? I quickly disconnected, closed everything, then sat there in silence, waiting. Nothing happened, but the message stayed in my mind. The next day at college, I saw something even worse. Karen, standing near the entrance of the building, talking to several students. When he saw me, he smiled. That same calm smile, and slowly, he started walking toward me. My heart began pounding. Had he discovered everything? He stopped in front of me. Arjun, he said casually. Long time. I forced a calm expression. Yeah, he studied my face carefully. You've been busy. Just college work. He nodded slowly. Then he said something strange. You know, I've always admired smart people. I didn't reply. Then he leaned closer and said quietly. But sometimes, smart people become curious. His eyes locked onto mine. And curiosity can be dangerous. For a moment the world felt completely silent. Was this a warning, or just coincidence? Then Karen stepped back and smiled again. Anyway, he said, take care of yourself. And he walked away. But something about that conversation chilled me. Because for the first time, I felt like the hunter had started looking for the spy. And if Karen truly suspected me, the game was about to become very dangerous. But what I didn't know yet was that something even bigger was about to happen. Something that would pull my past, my village, and my oldest enemy back into my life. Because the next file I opened on Karen's server contained a name I never expected to see again. Vikram. The same Vikram who once laughed at me in my village. The same Vikram who said, people like you don't go far. And according to this file, he was now one of Karen's clients. For a few seconds, I just stared at the screen. The name didn't change. It was still there. Vikram Patil. The same Vikram who once stood outside my school gate and laughed at me. The same Vikram who told me, people like you don't go far. And now, his name was inside Karen's secret client database. My mind started racing. What could Vikram possibly be doing with someone like Karen? I opened the file. Inside were transaction records, payment confirmations, encrypted messages. The amount of money involved shocked me. Vikram had transferred nearly 2 crore rupees over the past year. 2 crore. That wasn't small money. That meant Vikram wasn't just a random client. He was deeply involved. I kept scrolling. Then I found the communication logs. And what I read made everything even worse. Vikram wasn't just buying information. He was using Karen's network to spy on competitors, access private financial data, and manipulate land deals, illegal land deals. Suddenly I understood everything. Back in the village, Vikram's father had always been obsessed with buying farmland, slowly expanding his control over the area. But now it looked like Vikram had taken that ambition much further. He was using illegal data to cheat people, to force them into selling their land, to destroy competitors, and Karen's network was helping him do it. My fists tightened. The same person who mocked my family's downfall was now becoming rich through fraud. But this time, I had proof. The next morning, I met Neha again. We sat in the same cafe as before. I placed the new files on the table. Neha read them carefully. Then she looked up. This just made the case much bigger. I frowned. How? She pointed at Vikram's name. This guy isn't small. His family owns a lot of land in that region. They have strong political connections. That didn't surprise me. In the village, Vikram's family had always been powerful. But Neha continued, if we expose this, it won't just bring down Karen. It could expose a whole network of corruption. I leaned back in my chair. Then what's the plan? Neha thought for a moment. We keep gathering evidence, but now we focus on 2 targets. Karen and Vikram. The idea of exposing Vikram felt strangely satisfying. After years of humiliation, I finally had the chance to reveal who he really was. But the risk was growing too. Because if either of them suspected something, things could get very dangerous. Over the next few days, I continued accessing the servers. But something had changed. The system had become more secure. New security protocols, additional encryption layers. Someone had clearly upgraded the defenses. Which meant one thing. Karen was getting suspicious. One night, while exploring the database again, I found something unexpected. A scheduled meeting, private meeting, between Karen and Vikram. Location: Pune. Date: 2 days from now. My heart started racing. This could be huge. If Neha's team could monitor that meeting, they might capture direct evidence. The next morning I immediately contacted her. This could be our chance, I said. Neha listened carefully. Then she nodded. Yes, this might be the break we've been waiting for. She quickly called her team. Within hours, they started planning surveillance. If Karen and Vikram met in person, there was a good chance they would discuss business. And if that conversation was recorded, it could destroy them both. But there was still one problem. Karen trusted almost nobody, which meant he might choose a very secure meeting location. And if he sensed anything unusual, he would cancel immediately. Still, it was worth the risk. 2 days later, the plan was ready. The meeting was scheduled at a luxury hotel in Pune. Neha's team placed several undercover officers nearby, hidden cameras, audio surveillance. Everything was carefully prepared. My role was simple: stay away, stay quiet, and wait. But waiting was the hardest part. Every minute felt like an hour. Finally, late in the evening, my phone rang. It was Neha. Her voice sounded tense. They arrived. My heart started pounding. Both of them. Yes, Karen and Vikram are inside the hotel now. I sat down slowly. Did you get anything yet? Not yet, she replied. They're in a private room. We're trying to capture audio. A long silence followed. Then suddenly Neha spoke again. Wait, what? I asked quickly. Her voice changed. Something was wrong. They're leaving. Already? Yes. That was fast. A few seconds passed. Then Neha said something that made my stomach drop. Arjun, I think something went wrong. What do you mean? They looked nervous. Very nervous. Another pause. Then she said quietly, it's possible they suspect something. My chest tightened. If Karen believed someone was spying on him, he would start searching for the leak. And that leak was me. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying everything. The server access, the evidence, the meeting. Had I made a mistake somewhere? Had Karen finally connected the dots? The next morning, something happened that confirmed my worst fear. When I arrived at college, my phone vibrated. A new message appeared. Unknown number. The message was short, only one sentence. We need to talk again. Below it was a location. And the name at the bottom made my heart sink. Karen. He wanted to meet. And somehow, I had the terrible feeling that this time, he already knew everything. For a long moment, I just stared at the message on my phone. We need to talk again. And below it, the location, and the name, Karen. My heart was beating faster than it had in weeks. This wasn't a friendly meeting. Karen wasn't the type of person who randomly asked someone to talk. If he wanted to see me, there was a reason, and I had a terrible feeling that the reason was me. I immediately called Neha. She answered on the second ring. What happened? She asked. Karen messaged me. There was silence for a moment. Then she asked quietly, what did he say? He wants to meet. Where? I told her the location. A quiet restaurant not far from the university. Neha didn't speak for several seconds. Finally she said, this could mean two things. I swallowed. Either he suspects you, or he wants to recruit you again. Neither option sounded good. What should I do? I asked. Her answer came immediately. You go. I blinked. You want me to meet him? Yes, but you must stay calm. Act normal. Say nothing about the investigation. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. And if he asks questions? I asked. Deny everything. Then she added something important. We'll have people nearby. If anything goes wrong, we'll step in. That gave me a little confidence. But still, facing Karen again wasn't something I was looking forward to. That evening, I arrived at the restaurant 10 minutes early. It was a quiet place. Dim lights, soft music, not many customers. Exactly the kind of place where private conversations happened. I sat at a table near the back. My phone buzzed once. A message from Neha. We're outside. Stay calm. I took a deep breath. Then the door opened. Karen walked in. He looked exactly the same as always. Calm, confident, dangerous. His eyes quickly scanned the room. Then he spotted me, and smiled. He walked over and sat down across from me. Arjun, he said casually. Good to see you again. I forced a small smile. Yeah. For a moment neither of us spoke. The waiter came and took our order. Then Karen leaned back in his chair. You've been busy lately, he said. My heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? He shrugged. Just college, coding competitions, late nights on the computer. He looked directly at me. You work very hard. I tried to keep my voice steady. I like learning. Karen nodded slowly. That's good. Then he said something that made my stomach tighten. But curiosity can be dangerous. The exact same sentence he said before. I kept my expression neutral. I'm not sure what you mean. Karen smiled. Of course you don't. Then he took a sip of his drink. For a few seconds the conversation went silent. Then he leaned forward slightly. You know, I've been thinking about our last conversation. The one where I offered you a job. I nodded slowly. And I realized something. What? Karen smiled again. I underestimated you. That surprised me. What do you mean? You walked away from an opportunity most people would kill for. He studied my face carefully. That takes confidence. Or maybe he was testing me, trying to see how I would react. Then he said something unexpected. I'm giving you another chance. I blinked. What? Join us. You're talented, smart, and people like you can go very far in the right system. For a moment, I almost laughed. He had no idea I was already inside his system. But I kept my face serious. I already told you, I'm not interested. Karen sighed softly. That's disappointing. Then his eyes hardened slightly. You know, sometimes people refuse opportunities because they're scared. I'm not scared, I replied. He leaned closer. Then why did you access one of my servers last week? Everything inside me froze. For a moment I couldn't even breathe. Did he know? Had I been exposed? But I forced myself to stay calm. I don't know what you're talking about. Karen stared at me for a long moment. Then suddenly, he laughed. A relaxed laugh, like the tension never existed. Relax, Arjun, I'm joking. I wasn't sure if that was true. But I nodded slowly. The rest of the conversation stayed casual. College, technology, random topics. But underneath it all, there was a strange tension. Like two chess players pretending the game hadn't started yet. Finally Karen stood up. Well, he said, it was good seeing you again. He placed some money on the table. Then before leaving, he leaned closer and whispered something quietly. Something that made my blood run cold. Be careful who you trust. Then he walked out of the restaurant. A few minutes later, my phone rang. Neha, what happened? She asked quickly. I explained everything. The conversation, the questions, the strange joke about the server. Neha listened carefully. Then she said something that made my chest tighten. I don't think he was joking. You think he knows. I think he suspects. That was worse, because suspicion meant investigation, and investigation meant he would start searching for the leak. Searching for me. That night I sat alone in my room thinking about everything. The evidence, the investigation, the risks. If Karen discovered the truth before we gathered enough proof, everything could collapse. But stopping now wasn't an option. Not after everything we had discovered. Not after learning the truth about my father. And definitely not after seeing Vikram's name in those files. For years, people in my village believed my father was a fool. They believed he lost everything because he was careless. But soon, the truth would come out. And when it did, a lot of powerful people were going to fall. I looked at my laptop, at the hidden server connection, and I realized something important. The game had changed. Before, I was secretly watching them. Now, they might be watching me too. Which meant one thing. The next move had to be perfect. Because the war between me and Karen had officially begun. After the meeting with Karen, I knew one thing for certain. The situation had changed. Before, I was just quietly collecting information. But now, Karen suspected something, and suspicion made people like him dangerous. Very dangerous. The next morning I met Neha again. She looked serious the moment she sat down. I've been thinking about your conversation with Karen, she said. So have I replied. What do you think? Neha crossed her arms. I think he's testing you. My stomach tightened. Testing me? Yes. He doesn't have proof yet. But he's trying to see how you react. That made sense. Karen was too smart to accuse someone without evidence. But if he kept watching me, it was only a matter of time before he discovered something. So what do we do now? I asked. Neha took a deep breath. Now we move faster. What do you mean? We collect the final evidence. And we shut his entire operation down. I nodded slowly. The end of this war was getting closer. But that also meant the danger was increasing. That night, I logged into the server again. But this time, I was more careful than ever. Every movement, every click, every second had to be precise. Because if Karen had started monitoring the system, one mistake could expose everything. As I searched through the files, something unusual caught my attention. A new folder. It hadn't been there before. The name was simple, Project Horizon. Curious, I opened it. Inside were several encrypted files. Business plans, land maps, financial projections, and one document that made my eyes widen. It showed a massive land development project. Thousands of acres of farmland, villages, rural land areas. The location made my heart skip a beat. Because the area was very familiar. It was near my hometown. Near my village. I quickly opened another file. This one contained lists of landowners, farmers, families, people who lived in those villages. And next to many of the names were notes. Financial pressure, legal dispute, debt. My chest tightened as I understood what was happening. They were planning a massive land grab. Using private financial data, they were identifying farmers who were struggling. Then they would pressure them to sell their land cheaply. Through manipulation, through fear, through corruption. And one name appeared repeatedly in the project documents. Vikram. Of course it was him. He had always wanted power in that region. But now, he was planning something far bigger. If this project succeeded, hundreds of families could lose their land, their homes, their livelihoods, and Karen's network was helping him make it happen. I immediately copied the files. This was huge evidence, bigger than anything we had collected before. The next day, I showed everything to Neha. She looked stunned. This is massive, she said quietly. This isn't just corruption. This is organized land fraud. She flipped through the documents again. If they execute this project, entire villages could lose their land. I nodded. And my village is right in the middle of it. Neha looked at me seriously. Then we stop them. But we need one final thing. What? Direct proof of Karen and Vikram discussing the project. That would be difficult. Both of them were extremely careful. They rarely discussed important things directly. But then Neha said something interesting. We've been monitoring Vikram's travel records. And he's coming to Pune again. My eyes widened. When? 3 days from now. And we believe he's meeting Karen again. This could be the opportunity we needed. If we recorded their conversation about Project Horizon, it would be enough to arrest both of them. But it was risky, because now Karen was already suspicious. If he sensed anything unusual, he would disappear, and so would all the evidence. Over the next 3 days, Neha's team prepared carefully. Surveillance equipment, undercover officers, backup units, everything had to be perfect. Because this operation might be the only chance we had. The meeting was scheduled at a private business club in Pune. An exclusive place, very secure. But Neha's team managed to place hidden recording devices inside one of the meeting rooms. Now we just had to wait. The night of the meeting finally arrived. My phone rang around 8 p.m. It was Neha. They're both here, she said quietly. My heart started pounding. Karen and Vikram, yes, they just entered the building. I sat down slowly. What's happening now? They're heading to the meeting room. A few seconds passed. Then Neha spoke again. We're getting audio. My pulse quickened. If they started discussing Project Horizon, this would be the evidence we needed. For several minutes, I waited silently. Then Neha suddenly said something that made my stomach drop. Arjun, something's wrong. What happened? I asked quickly. The conversation is strange. Strange how? They're not talking about business. Then what are they talking about? Neha hesitated. Then she answered quietly. They're talking about a leak. My heart stopped. They know. We're not sure yet, but they're clearly looking for someone. Another pause. Then Neha said something even worse. They're reviewing access logs. Cold fear spread through my body. If they traced those logs, they might eventually find me. A few minutes later, Neha spoke again. Her voice sounded tense. Arjun, what? I think they found something. My chest tightened. What do you mean? They just mentioned a name. I gripped the phone harder. What name? There was a short silence. Then Neha said it. Yours. For a few seconds after Neha said my name, I couldn't speak. My mind went completely blank. They said my name. I finally asked. Neha's voice sounded tense. Yes. My heart was pounding so loudly I could almost hear it. What exactly did they say? They were reviewing server access logs, she replied. And your name came up in a university database record. Cold fear ran through my body. The logs. Of course. At some point my access must have connected back to the university network. Which meant if they dug deep enough, they could eventually trace it back to me. What are they doing now? I asked quickly. Neha listened for a moment. They're still talking. Vikram thinks someone from the college is spying. And Karen. She paused. Karen sounds very calm. That was worse. Karen being calm meant he was thinking, planning, calculating. People like him didn't panic. They hunted. About 10 minutes later, Neha called again. The meeting is over, she said. They're leaving the building. Did you get the recording? I asked. Yes. And it's enough. My heart skipped a beat. Enough for what? For arrests. That sentence felt like a huge weight lifting off my shoulders. Really? Yes, she said. They discussed Project Horizon. They talked about manipulating land deals. They even mentioned using private financial data. That's direct evidence. For the first time in weeks, I felt a little relief. So what happens now? I asked. Neha didn't hesitate. Now we move fast. Tomorrow morning, we launch the operation. But the night wasn't over yet. Because about 30 minutes later, my phone vibrated again. A new message. Unknown number. My stomach tightened as I opened it. The message contained only one sentence. You're smarter than I thought. And below it, Karen. My blood ran cold. He knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. I immediately called Neha. He just messaged me. What did it say? I read the message out loud. There was silence on the other end of the phone. Then Neha spoke. That confirms it. He knows. What do I do? I asked. Pack a bag. My heart jumped. What? Leave your apartment tonight. Come to the safe location we discussed. You shouldn't stay alone right now. For the first time since this entire investigation started, I truly understood how dangerous this had become. I quickly packed a small bag, laptop, phone charger, a few clothes. Before leaving, I looked around my small apartment. This place had been my entire life for the past few years. But now, it didn't feel safe anymore. When I stepped outside the building, a car was waiting. Neha's team. They drove me to a secure apartment across the city. Neha was already there. She looked tired but focused. We'll keep you here until the operation is complete, she said. I nodded. When does it happen? She looked at her watch. Early morning, before sunrise. Multiple teams will move at the same time. Karan's office, his servers, his financial accounts, and Vikram's business headquarters. The scale of the operation surprised me. This big? I asked. Neha smiled slightly. When we strike properly. For a moment the room was quiet. Then I asked the question that had been in my mind all night. What about Rakesh? Neha looked at me. He's on the list too. We have his location. Once Karan's network falls, he won't have anyone protecting him anymore. That thought gave me a strange sense of closure. For years my father believed Rakesh simply disappeared. But soon, everyone would know the truth. Around 3 a.m., nobody in the room was sleeping. Everyone was preparing, checking equipment, reviewing plans. Then finally, Neha's phone rang. She answered immediately. Yes, she listened for a moment. Then she smiled. It's starting. My heart began racing again. What's happening? I asked. Teams are moving now. She put the phone on speaker. I could hear voices in the background. Police radios. Commands being given. Then someone said loudly through the phone. Target location reached. Another voice followed. Servers secured. Then another. Vikram's office surrounded. Everything was happening so fast. Years of crimes, all collapsing in a single morning. Then suddenly, another voice came through the radio. Urgent. Problem. Everyone in the room went silent. Neha grabbed the phone. What happened? The officer replied. Karan isn't here. My chest tightened. What do you mean he's not there? Neha asked. His office is empty. His main servers were wiped an hour ago. The room fell silent. An hour ago. That meant he knew the raid was coming. Neha's expression hardened. How? The officer continued. And there's more. What? Vikram is missing too. My stomach dropped. They were gone. Both of them. Somehow. They had escaped before the operation started. Which meant one terrifying thing. Karan had been one step ahead the entire time. And now, the two most dangerous people in this entire story were free. Somewhere out there. And they both knew exactly who helped destroy their empire. Me. Neha slowly lowered the phone. The room was completely silent. Finally I asked the question everyone was thinking. What happens now? Neha looked at me seriously. Now, she took a deep breath. Now the real fight begins. Because Karan and Vikram were no longer just criminals hiding in the shadows. Now they were fugitives. Dangerous, angry, and desperate. And desperate enemies are the most dangerous kind. The room stayed silent for a long time after Neha ended the call. Karan and Vikram had escaped. Just like that, months of investigation, evidence, planning, and somehow they were still one step ahead. I looked at Neha. So what happens now? She rubbed her forehead, clearly frustrated. We still have enough evidence to shut down most of their network, she said. But Karan and Vikram, she paused. They're smart. They won't disappear forever. That part worried me the most. Because if they were still free, they might come after the person who helped expose them. Me. The next 2 days were chaotic. News channels started reporting the story. Massive cybercrime network exposed. Illegal data trading, corporate spying, financial fraud. Several people connected to the operation were arrested. Companies were raided. Bank accounts frozen. The entire underground network Karan built over the years was collapsing. But two names kept appearing in every report. Karan Mehta, Vikram Patil, both listed as wanted fugitives. Both still missing. And both very dangerous. 3 days later, I finally decided to go home. Back to my village. I hadn't been there in years. After everything that happened, after learning the truth about my father, I needed to see him. To tell him the truth. Neha wasn't thrilled about the idea. It could be risky, she warned. If Karan or Vikram want revenge, they might target you. I nodded. I understand, but I still need to go. She thought about it for a moment. Then she sighed. All right, but we'll keep monitoring the situation. The bus ride back to the village felt strange. The roads looked familiar. The small towns, the farmland, everything reminded me of my childhood. Memories started returning. Walking to school, helping my father in the fields, listening to the villagers gossip at the tea stall. For years I avoided coming back. Because I didn't want to hear the whispers again. The same whispers that said my father had lost everything because he was foolish. But now, I knew the truth. And soon, everyone else would know it too. When I finally stepped off the bus, the village looked exactly the same. Small houses, dusty roads, the same old tea stall near the market. Some people recognized me immediately. They whispered to each other. That's Arjun, Mahesh's son. I ignored them and walked straight toward my house. My father was sitting outside, just like he used to years ago. For a moment he didn't recognize me. Then his eyes widened. Arjun, I smiled. Hi, Baba. He stood up slowly and hugged me. It had been a long time since I saw him smile like that. My mother came running from inside the house. Tears in her eyes. You finally came home. For the first time in years. Our family sat together peacefully. But I knew I still had something important to tell them. Later that evening, I explained everything. The investigation, Karen's network, the scam, Rakesh. At first my father didn't believe it. You're saying, Rakesh planned everything? Yes, he created the fake company. He stole the money, and people like Karen helped him hide it. My father stayed silent for a long time. Then he slowly said something I will never forget. So I wasn't foolish. No, I replied. You were betrayed. For years that guilt had been eating him alive. But now, the truth had finally come out. The next morning something unexpected happened. A police jeep arrived in the village. Several officers stepped out. The villagers gathered around immediately. Everyone was curious. Then the officer in charge asked loudly, "Where is Mahesh Patil?" My father stepped forward nervously. "I'm Mahesh." The officer looked at him and said, "We're here regarding the fraud case involving Rakesh Sharma." The villagers started whispering, "Fraud case, Rakesh." The officer continued, "New evidence has been discovered. Your financial loss has been officially recorded as part of a criminal investigation." The entire crowd went silent. Then the officer said the sentence that changed everything. "You were a victim, not responsible for the loss." For years the village believed my father made a foolish decision. But now the police were confirming the truth. Right there in front of everyone. I saw people looking at my father differently. The same people who once laughed at him. But the biggest surprise came later that afternoon. Another police vehicle arrived, this time with handcuffs, and inside the jeep was someone I never expected to see again. Rakesh, my father's cousin, the man who ran away with our money. He looked older, nervous, defeated. The police pushed him out of the jeep. The villagers were shocked. No one said a word. The officer announced loudly, "Rakesh Sharma has been arrested for financial fraud and for involvement with an illegal cybercrime network." Rakesh looked around the crowd nervously. Then his eyes landed on me. And in that moment, he realized exactly who helped bring him down. But just as the police were about to take him away, something unexpected happened. A loud sound came from the road. An expensive black SUV stopped near the crowd. Everyone turned to look. The door opened slowly, and someone stepped out. My heart instantly dropped, because standing there, with a calm smile on his face, was Karen, and standing right behind him was Vikram. They had come back, and judging by the way they were looking at me, they hadn't come to surrender. For a few seconds, no one in the village moved. Everyone was staring at the black SUV, and the two men who had just stepped out, Karen and Vikram, the same Vikram who used to stand outside my school and laugh at me. The same Vikram who once told me, "People like you don't go far." And now, after everything that happened, he was standing in front of my house again. But this time, the situation was very different. Because the entire village was watching. And the police were already there. The officer in charge stepped forward immediately. "Karen Mehta," he said firmly. "You are under investigation for multiple criminal activities." Karen didn't look worried. In fact, he looked almost relaxed. He slowly clapped his hands once. "Impressive," he said calmly. "You moved fast." The officer frowned. "You should not be here." Karen smiled. "I disagree." Then his eyes moved toward me. And his smile widened slightly. "I came to congratulate someone." The entire crowd followed his gaze. Now everyone was looking at me. Karen walked a few steps closer. "You did very well, Arjun. You managed to destroy years of work." My father looked confused. "Arjun, what is he talking about?" But before I could answer, Vikram suddenly spoke. His voice was filled with anger. "This rat betrayed us," the villagers murmured. They had never seen Vikram this angry before. He pointed directly at me. "He hacked our systems. He worked with the police. He ruined everything." The crowd turned toward me again. Now they were whispering, trying to understand what was happening. Karen raised his hand calmly. "Relax, Vikram." Then he looked back at the police officer. "You want to arrest me?" The officer nodded. "Yes." Karen chuckled softly. "On what evidence?" The officer didn't hesitate. "Cybercrime, illegal data trading, financial fraud, corporate espionage." Karen smiled slightly. "That sounds very dramatic." Then he slowly reached into his pocket. Several officers immediately moved closer. But Karen simply pulled out his phone. He held it up. "You should check the news." The officer frowned. "What do you mean?" Karen tapped his phone. Then he turned the screen around. A news article was displayed. The headline made my stomach drop. "Major cybercrime evidence declared invalid after data breach." The officer grabbed the phone quickly. He read the article carefully. Then his expression changed. "This can't be real." Karen shrugged. "It is." Then he looked at me again. "You see, Arjun, the problem with digital evidence is that it can disappear." My heart started racing. Had he destroyed the evidence? Neha's entire case depended on those files. Karen continued calmly. "My lawyers worked very hard this morning. Several servers were declared compromised, which means the evidence collected from them," he smiled, "is now questionable." The villagers didn't fully understand the situation. But the police officers clearly did. Their expressions had changed completely. Vikram laughed loudly. You thought you won. You thought you destroyed us. He looked around the village. Let me tell you something about this boy. He pointed at me again. This so-called genius is the reason your village will lose everything. The villagers started murmuring again. What does he mean? Vikram continued speaking loudly so everyone could hear. Because of him, a massive development project has been cancelled. Investments gone. Jobs gone. Money gone. Some villagers started looking at me suspiciously. Vikram knew exactly what he was doing. Turning the crowd against me. Just like old times. But this time, I was ready. I stepped forward calmly. Are you finished? Vikram smirked. You still think you're the hero? I looked directly at him. Tell them the truth. The crowd became quiet again. What truth? Vikram asked mockingly. I pointed toward the police jeep where Rakesh was sitting. That the entire land project was a fraud. That you were planning to cheat farmers. That Karen's network was helping you steal land. The villagers gasped. Some of them recognized the areas mentioned in the documents. Their land. Their homes. Vikram laughed. Do you have proof? Before I could answer, another voice spoke from behind the crowd. Yes. Everyone turned around, and my heart immediately felt relief. Because walking through the crowd, with several officers behind her, was Neha. She walked forward confidently. Then she held up a folder. Fresh evidence, she said calmly. Karen's smile slowly disappeared. Neha continued speaking. While you were busy escaping this morning, we recovered backup servers. Servers you didn't know existed. She opened the folder. Inside were printed documents, transaction records, client lists, Project Horizon files, everything. Karen's expression had finally changed. For the first time, he looked surprised. Neha handed the documents to the police officer. These records directly linked Karen Mehta and Vikram Patil to financial fraud, illegal data trading, and organized land scams. The officer looked at the files. Then he looked at Karen. This is enough. Several officers immediately stepped forward. But before they could grab him, Karen suddenly laughed, not angrily, almost impressed. He looked at me one last time. You really are different from the boy I first met. Then he slowly raised his hands. All right, I suppose the game is over. But Vikram wasn't as calm. No, he shouted. You idiots don't understand. He tried to step back toward the SUV. But two officers quickly grabbed him. Handcuffs clicked shut, and just like that, the two most powerful enemies I had ever faced were finally under arrest. As the police vehicles prepared to leave, the entire village stood in silence. They had just witnessed everything. The truth, the crimes, the lies, and finally, the justice. One old man stepped forward slowly. He looked at my father. Then he said something quietly. Mahesh, we were wrong about you. Another villager nodded. Yes, you were never the fool. Slowly, more people began apologizing. For years they had mocked my father. But now the truth was clear. My father looked at me. His eyes filled with emotion. You did all this. I nodded quietly. He placed his hand on my shoulder. And for the first time in years, I saw pride in his eyes. But as the police vehicles drove away, I noticed something strange. Karen looked back at me through the window. And instead of anger, he was smiling, like he knew something we didn't. And that smile made me realize something. The war might be over. But this story wasn't finished yet. As the police vehicles drove away with Karen and Vikram inside, the entire village remained silent. People were still processing what had just happened. For years they believed one story. That my father had made a terrible mistake. That he had destroyed our family with a foolish investment. But now the truth was out. He had been betrayed, and the people responsible were finally arrested. Slowly, the villagers started walking toward my father. Some looked ashamed, some avoided eye contact. One of the elders spoke first. Mahesh, we judged you too quickly. Another man added quietly, we believed the wrong person. My father didn't say anything for a moment. Then he simply nodded. It's all right, he said. But I knew it wasn't that simple. For years he had carried the shame of something that wasn't even his fault. But today, that weight was finally gone. Later that evening, our house was filled with people. Neighbors, old friends, even people who had avoided us for years. Everyone wanted to talk. Everyone wanted to apologize. My mother kept bringing tea for everyone. And my father sat quietly listening to their words. But something had changed. For the first time in years, people were speaking to him with respect. That night, when everyone finally left, my father looked at me. You should have told us earlier. I wanted to, I replied. But I didn't know the full truth yet. He nodded slowly. Then he asked something that surprised me. How did you learn all this? So I told him everything. How I started studying computers. How I discovered the hidden network. How Neha and her team helped build the case. He listened quietly. When I finished, he smiled. You went much further than I ever imagined. The next morning the news spread quickly. Not just in the village, Across the entire district, news channels were reporting the arrests. Cybercrime mastermind Karen Mehta arrested. Major land scam exposed. Farmers targeted by fraud network. But the story that shocked many people the most was about Rakesh, the man who had cheated his own family. When villagers saw the news, they finally understood what had happened years ago. My father's name was cleared completely. 2 days later, something even more surprising happened. A government officer came to our house. He brought several documents. After reviewing the fraud case, he explained, "The government has decided to compensate victims." My father looked confused. "Victims?" "Yes," the officer replied. "Your family lost a significant amount of money due to the scam." He handed my father a paper. The compensation amount was far bigger than my father expected. But more important than the money was what the officer said next. "You were one of the first people to report suspicious activity years ago. Your report actually helped investigators later." My father looked stunned. "All this time, I thought no one believed me." The officer smiled. "Sometimes the truth takes time to appear." Over the next few weeks, life in the village slowly returned to normal. But people treated our family differently now. Respectfully. Even the same kids who once laughed at me in school now asked me questions about technology. Some asked how they could learn computers too. It felt strange, but also satisfying. One evening I was sitting outside the house with my father. The sun was setting over the fields, just like it used to when I was a child. My father suddenly said, "You know, when everything happened years ago, I thought my life was finished. But now I see something." "What?" I asked. He looked at me proudly. "Sometimes losing everything creates something even bigger." I smiled. He was right, because if that betrayal had never happened, I might never have pushed myself so hard. I might never have learned the skills that exposed the truth. And I might never have come back home like this. A week later I met Neha one last time in the city. She looked relieved. "The case is solid now," she said. "Karen and Vikram won't be getting out anytime soon." "What about the network?" I asked. "Mostly gone," she replied. "Without them, the entire operation collapsed." I nodded. Then she smiled slightly. "You know something interesting." "What?" "You could have made a lot of money doing what they did. But instead you destroyed them." I shrugged. "My father taught me something important." "What's that?" "That success means nothing if you lose your integrity." Neha laughed softly. "That's a rare lesson these days." Months later, something unexpected happened again. A tech company in Hyderabad contacted me. They had seen my work during the investigation. They offered me a position in their cybersecurity team. A very good one. Better than anything I had imagined when I first left the village. When I told my parents, my mother was excited, but my father said something simple. "Wherever you go, remember where you started." I nodded, because I would never forget that. Before leaving the village, I walked through the old market one last time. Past the tea stall, past the school, past the same streets where people once laughed at us. But now when people saw me, they nodded respectfully. Some even smiled. One old man said something that stayed with me. "You proved something important." "What's that?" I asked. "That a person's beginning doesn't decide their ending." That night I packed my bags again. But this time, I wasn't running away from the past. I was moving toward the future. And as I left the village, I realized something important. Years ago people called me the son of a failure. But now, they called my father something very different. The father of the man who exposed the truth. And that was the victory that mattered the most.